introducing classes such as medical informatics from the, probably maybe we put in the curriculums in high school, College of Science and universities in Tanzania, integrated health information systems from the dispensaries, regional hospitals, build the information from data and translated that information to the knowledge that the decision makers, such as Dr. Ngaras and other physicians back homes and politicians, they can use for decision making. If you don't have the knowledge, pretty much you're not, it will continue to talk and talk and talk. So the business intelligence, it's one of the key components. If you see even the healthcare reform in the United States today, most of the hospitals, they have integrated the systems in the physicians. If you're working, such as you right now, you're using a laptop to collect the data.
Thank you, and that's all the time we have. Let's, a big round of applause for our wonderful panelists. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'll try to project my voice because they're coming. They are coming? Oh, okay, go ahead. So don't count my time.
But we can hear you. This is a smaller room, so.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, we can, I think we can just...
We can do it. We can do without it. All right, thank you. As Susan introduced me, I am an academician, and I do have passion in education. I taught in few universities back at home, back in Sokoine University of Agriculture. I was teaching veterinary medicine students. Then I came over to United States. The first thing I do was education. I've been teaching at community college level and also at the university level. One thing which I realized was there is a gap between what is offered currently in our universities, which is a good thing, which I think that is the education, but there is a training aspect of it that sometimes it's not linked with the education. As we can all ascertain, most of our graduates go out to the marketplace, they realize that they have trained in things that are not relevant, and they end up being misplaced. They trained in one thing, they're working in another thing. Somebody's, have a bachelor's in humanities, they go out there and they're working as tax drivers, or they do whatever they have to do. Now I realize that to be a major issue with diaspora, so with brothers and sisters. We come from Tanzania, or parents bring their kids over to study in the United States, and once they're here, they don't know exactly what to do. Do they need to go purely on education, or do they need to kind of like find a trade, a skill that will help them get a job and then continue with education? So my philosophy is, for somebody who does not have support, for somebody who are not, 4.0 GPA, people who are not very smart, and they, rely on their parents back in Tanzania to send them money, probably they need to start slow. They need to get a training, for a short period of time, let's say 6 months, get a job, and then go back for education. And that's what we are doing as a college. So we said that not only that we conceptualize it, but we decided to put that into action. I started a college, and in this college what we're doing is we're taking people who have finished high school, we train them between 8 weeks to 1 year, depending on what they want to do. Then they go out there, they get entry-level jobs in a hospital. We all know healthcare right now is still hiring. This is one of the fields that, they still have, I'll say, high percentage of employability. So once they get a job, we encourage them to come back to us and further their education. So I would say that's what we are doing. As I've said yesterday, we are aspiring to become a we'll be doing is somebody comes in. Okay, go ahead, sorry, man. Stop my time. I know I have 2 minutes now. So what we are planning to do, what we are doing is if somebody comes in with a high school diploma, we will train them, help them get a job. In fact, because of the size of the college, it's a sizable college, we take them by hand, help them get the employment. Once they get employment, we encourage them to come back and to do the further studies. And the government here has given us the opportunity to become a university as by December this year. So we will take them through those necessary steps, from a certificate to a diploma, from a diploma to an associate degree, from associate degree to bachelor's, all the way to master's, and if they want to up to doctorate while they already have a job. And we think that's a very practical model. We have tried in Winston-Salem. We have already graduated more than 3,000 students. And I'll say up to 90% of our students get jobs locally, and they have an opportunity to further their studies. So I will stop there and continue to dialogue if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shandula, for such a good topic. So just to summarize what Dr. Shandula said, he helps train people, and also he helps them with employment, and then he encourages them to continue with their studies. That's very good. Thank you so much. Our second speaker is going to be Dr. Charles Msiba.
Thank you. My name is Charles Msiba. I'm an anthropologist by profession, but actually I call myself as what we call applied anthropologist, because yes, I'm on the academic institutions, which is actually, a lot of us are considered to be people basically being on the Eiffel Tower, but that's not exactly what I do. I do things which I actually sort of, I will start by showing this image from the Nature magazine a couple of years ago, and which I actually read an article saying that the fear for all these human footprints. These are, I'm not so sure how many of you know where all these human footprints are. Some people do. They're actually at Laetoli, which is about 45 minutes from Olduvai Gorge. So you have Olduvai Gorge, which is a site which is about 1.9 million years old, with various human remains, but Laetoli is actually 3.6 million years old. Those prints were actually discovered in 1976 by the late Dr. Mary Leakey. And when they were discovered by sheer accident, of course the scientific community didn't know what to do about it. So they were actually buried as a temporary measure. They've been buried for over 20 years now. And so I usually take students, for the last 15 years I've been taking students to do research in that part of the world. So I have a lot of passion for actually conservation work, and as trying to agitate the community and try to figure out what can we do with these resources. So I'm interested in cultural resources as an asset for basically improving the living conditions of the people in the area. So two things happened. One was to try to figure out, as people in academia, how can we actually get to do a lot of work and give back to Tanzania. What has happened in the past is that you get a lot of researchers going to countries like Tanzania, bringing American students, which I do as well myself, but in fact not leaving much to the country. So I decided there was a need to do something about that. So we got, we ended up working on this aspect, trying to figure out what can we do to Tanzania. So I started mobilizing resources to make a difference in the research. One thing I realized, a lot of academicians in Tanzania actually are very busy teaching at the same time because they are also not paid so well. They have to worry about their families. They have kids to send to school. They don't have the time not to write. Even if they have time to write, they're writing articles to try to publish. At the same time, they actually have no ways to actually sort of compete in the global research. So we started teaming up with University of Dar es Salaam, KUHAS, which is the Catholic University of Health Sciences in Mwanza, and Santa Francis University College of Health and Allied Sciences. And we started developing a mechanism in which we started mentoring both junior faculty in Tanzania on how to actually get funded. And one of the success story was that last year we got actually a joint research grant between the National Research Foundation in South Africa and Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology. This is one of the first grants which we got for University of Dar es Salaam and all these other universities. And we brought in the researchers together. We had a team of about 15 scientists and 25 graduate students and 30 undergraduate students. So mentoring them and working together. That's one. The other thing which we've done is actually capacity building. At Olduvai Gorge, when the Leakeys actually were working out there, there was no infrastructure. So a lot of the material which we actually discovered in Tanzania were sent to Nairobi. Not to Dar es Salaam, they were sent to Nairobi. For 30 years, researchers went to Nairobi, paid bench fee to actually look at Tanzanian material. Tanzania was not getting any money back. So to make the story short, we decided, working with my colleagues in Europe, through the European Union, we got 250,000 euros. Now we have a research facility at Olduvai Gorge. We don't want any of our finds to be left to Tanzania, so we want to remain there. So we have done that. The other thing we have done is actually what we call valorization of cultural heritage assets in Tanzania. Valorization, basically what it means, it's making a price tag, putting a price tag to actually the cultural heritage so that it becomes an asset in which you can bring in tourists and actually be able to showcase it. We have only the oldest footprints, 3.6 million years old. It's only in Tanzania, nowhere else. Nobody goes to look at it because they're buried. And the community surrounding, they're not even benefiting from their cultural heritage. So we got a 2 million euro grant, which I'm very proud of, helping the Ngorongoro Conservation Area Authority. We got a grant for 2 million euros, in which is going to be used to do 2 community centers in 2 villages at Endulen and Esere in the Ngorongoro area, in which they will bring in economy. So we have done that, but here is the center which we just finished building at Olduvai Gorge, and it's called Agwaya Mturi. Mturi was the first Tanzanian director of antiquities, an archaeologist. He passed away some years ago. To try to honor and remember his legacy, we have actually done that. So that's, but the beauty about this infrastructure is built, which is actually environmental friendly. It can be dismounted and actually rebuilt in other places if need be, based on the carrying capacity of the area. We have to take that into account because Ngorongoro conservation is at the brink, basically, of surpassing its own carrying capacity. So we need to think about it. So that's one, we have done that. And then we are doing a lot of other things. We've been advising the Minister of Natural Resources and Tourism about the Laitoli footprints. In fact, there was an American company here, an American institution in the US which is against actually exposing those footprints. They don't want to see us, the footprints exposed. Then I asked, whose heritage is it anyway, if we are actually doing that? I got in trouble for doing that and actually had to leave the Minister of Natural Resources and Tourism because I used to work for them. And that's why I ended up here in the United States. But I'm still trying to give back. So we actually said, we can do something about it. So when the Getty Conservation said, it's a remote area, you cannot build a museum there, nobody will come. I said, because you haven't done it, it does not necessarily mean it cannot be done.
That's right.
So we lucky enough, the Tanzanian president is actually very keen about seeing this project actually succeed. It's a $35 million project. And we already have we have $6 million. We have commissioned an architect who is actually going to do a lot of work there. I will give, that's what is going to be built. That's what, so the beauty about this, it's going to be a museum, it's going to be an education center to house about 60 kids and their teachers. It's going to be a research facility in which we have state-of-the-art. We are working now with National Science Foundation in the US to try to equip it once it gets built. So that because we're telling National Science Foundation, I worked with Costed, I did a research on how many PhDs, American PhDs, have actually benefited from doing research in Tanzania. I said, we need to put resources in Tanzania. And they've agreed that. So those are the few things we have done, but I have to go very quickly. This is the rendering inside how it will look like. I call this a place of reflection, because once you get in there, you've seen the footprints once they will be exposed. Those are the prints right there. They're covered right now. You cannot see them. But they will be exposed once the building is actually being built. And in a climate control chamber, you can come in and reflect, go back in time, 3.6 million years ago, and figure out our ancestors, how they actually lived. So those are some of the things we are doing. And then I'm also passionate about education. And we have an organization which is called Africa School Assistance Project. And that project, we actually succeeded very recently. We got our certificate in Tanzania. We are registered in Colorado, but we finally got our registration in Tanzania as a non-for-profit organization. We are building schools. Starting 2008, we started only with $30,000 actually, and we achieved a lot of this. How did you achieve that? We go to the community, we work with the community, we empower the community. We basically, what we do is through volunteerism. What we're doing here, we mobilize people, as I say, you know what, you can come to Tanzania. If you can raise $1,500, pay your ticket, you will come and actually work with the community. After that, I will give you a private tour to Serengeti and Ngorongoro, in which I will be your tour guide, pro bono. So every summer I do that. We take a group of 15 to 20 people. That's how we raise our money. But finally now, we actually became, the Clinton Global Foundation has actually recognized our work. We actually, very recently, got cited the United Nations Foundation for the work we are doing. One of the things we are doing is try to empower, especially young women. Make sure that one thing we are doing is to keep following and working with the schools and the community and make sure that there is success. Some of the schools we have worked with have actually succeeded. You can see we started with a school one like that, transformed it to a school like that. Guess what happened? This was a school which was actually 168th in the Meru district. It went from 168th to a 10th place in school performance. And we keep working with that. We are empowering teachers, we help teachers, we subsidize them a little bit so that actually they can actually stay focused. So we are doing that. And then this is another school, Basenyi Primary School, which is actually feeding to the secondary school within the area. And then Kirenga, so those are the 3 schools in the Meru district. And starting this year, we have actually moved our project also, expanded to the Lake Victoria zone. We are working in the Misungwi district. We started with the Chore Primary School, which actually had only 1 classroom. We just finished 6 classrooms, 1 teacher's office, 1 teacher's housing, and a preschool. The tiny little building there, that's going to be for the kids who are actually not ready to go to school, but to keep them engaged, get their mind sort of inquisitive. And so we are doing all this. And we are also working on an Italia secondary school, in which, so we have teamed with the community. We got in the memorandum of understanding with the district council, with the village, and we say, let's work together. Our goal, particularly for the Italia secondary school, is to make it one of the best in the region. We actually have teamed up with Sun City, which is actually a solar company, is going to provide 125 panels to the school. We are teamed up with Water for People. We are putting in a board, which is going to be about $35,000 worth of work, which they will do for us. And teamed up with a company in Nebraska is going to provide 120 iPads for the kids in the school. So we are retooling the school. We are putting in, we are interested in science and mathematics. That to me is the future of Tanzania. We are talking about oil and gas. We don't have experts. We need scientists. We need people to do that. And to finish up, we have a Kupanda project. This is a program to empower young girls. So basically at the secondary school, we will bring in entrepreneurs, successful young women entrepreneurs in Tanzania to talk to these kids as a part of an extracurricular. We will bring in leaders to talk to them. So develop leadership skills and entrepreneurship for these kids so that when they get out there, you were talking about students going to school and not knowing what they're doing at the end of the day. And I think this is what we need to be doing. And then, of course, I'm interested in science and technology and engineering and math. That's another thing which we're actually sort of moving forward, and I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Silva. Just the title itself, giving back to Tanzania through tourism. Thank you for the presentation. Dr. Ziba has just told us that education is very important because it has a big impact on Tanzanian society, and also it influences what kinds of individuals we become. Thank you very much for the presentation. Presenter will be Dr. Nyamoro, and he will talk about traversing multiple worlds on second generation Tanzanian in America.
Thank you. While the first two presenters, good friends of mine, were talking about lofty ideas around the academy, training people at Southern University, and giving back in terms of creating research institutions in Tanzania. My job is a simple one and a straightforward one because actually it involves about half the people I see in this room. Folks who left Tanzania sometime back had the fortune of bearing children. And these children, a little bit. You want me to be louder?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
We have to compete.
All right, okay. So I'm going to be talking about half the people who are seated in this room because you have had the fortune of bearing children in this country. And yet there might seem to be a confusion, a contradiction in terms of how you raise them so that they can continue having connections back to Tanzania on the one hand, on the other hand, continuing to apply their skills and exist in the United States. This is a major challenge because, and by the way, I'm almost talking about myself. One of the clear challenges that exist between first generation Tanzanians who live in America and their children is that when we initially came here, I remember convincing myself that the day I graduate, get my PhD or whatever, At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be at the airport going back home because I was looking forward to working and contributing to the development of my country. Of course, 2 years later, you say, well, I'll be going back 5 years later, and it has now been 20-some years, and we're still here. And the children have come along the way. And so one of the key issues, ideologically, is to try and figure out how you as a parent will be able to handle this very same question. Because when we came to the United States then, we were convinced that we were going back, and somehow we belonged there. But then the kids who were born here, psychologically, emotionally, and otherwise, actually, in many ways belong here. In the home, we try very hard to speak Kiswahili to them, to convince them that they're actually African, they're Tanzanians, but I'm sure you've heard this all along. Once they are upset with you, they'll tell you that, but you are African, and by the way, this is not Africa, and so you cannot apply the same standards. That's why I keep on saying that this analytical base for my presentation almost mirrors my own home in terms of how my children react to me. But I think there is a larger question here, and the question is, how does one impart the ideological commitment to Tanzania within the home, and yet fully understand that the children actually are of multiple worlds? When we came, my dad would write me a letter. It would take 2 weeks to get here. Right now, whatever the kids watch on CNN in Durham is the same stuff that my mother in the village is watching on CNN. But the fact that they are watching the same item on the news does not mean that ideologically they connect. And so the task for us as parents and as folks who have had children, and by the way, this doesn't simply apply to Tanzania, it applies to many others, is how then do you try to convince the children that they need to make the connections so that they can impart the skills they acquire here to Tanzania's development. I will explain this position by throwing out an analogy and a comparative case study. Academic studies on Indians who migrated from India in the 1960s and early 70s. Many of them decided to literally cut off the link between themselves and their mother country or their country of origin because they figured they were running away from poverty. And if you make it here as an engineer, as a medical doctor, and what have you, then perhaps your life will be much better. And indeed, they assumed that their children would be able to fully integrate into American society and they can forget about India. A generation or 2 generations after that, guess what is happening? There's very clear evidence that their children are actually rebelling against the parents because they want to continue being connected to India. And indeed, Indian children, not only have they rebelled against the so-called full integration into what they may have assumed to be white society, the kinds of discrimination they face in this country because they're quote-unquote not Anglo, they're not white, has reinforced the need for them to get the connections back in India. And so the lesson for us in terms of both history and ideology and commitment is that we need to be protecting these children in terms of if there is a rejection of them by what we may call here the majority society, what is the fallback position for them? Because if if you don't have a fallback position for the children, and if ideologically here they are isolated, then you're creating some very serious problems down the road, because they may not feel that they belong in Tanzania, and yet they may not feel that they belong in America. And so for you as a responsible parent, what do you do? And I think the solution might lie in what another comparative case may present for us, which is Singapore. What did Singapore do? Contrary to the kinds of debates we are having in Tanzania regarding dual citizenships and what have you, what the Singaporean folks did from 1965 was that they simply said, look, you have Singaporean connections, whether you are the person who initially left Singapore or the children. You are all Singaporeans. We do not care whether you have 5 passports. What we care about is your ability to come back to Singapore and contribute to Singaporean society. Oh, and by the way, you can keep your 5 passports. And we will try to make your life as comfortable as possible by providing an environment whereby you can excel by applying your skills. And so the issue of how children can traverse the two worlds, America and Tanzania, would be for a concerted effort on the part of Tanzania to create a conducive environment whereby our children would be able to go back and actually feel that they are welcome and they belong, all right? Both in terms of skills and ideology. While at the same time, not forgetting that in terms of the global dynamism right now, globalization, internationalization, and in terms of production systems, you could work in Dar es Salaam for a company that is in Durham. We all do that now. You work for a Canadian company or Japanese company while you're in Durham. It also means that these days with technology, you can live in Dar es Salaam and work for a company in Durham, and vice versa. And so the idea would be how we engage our children in terms of that particular ideological commitment and skills development to make sure that they're able to navigate the two worlds. But it